Welcome to the Tuesday edition of Juan's World, and you'll notice that I'm on my couch again and not in front of my kitchen, so that means I'm not going to be cooking today. But I think I will go back to do some cooking on Friday. Not sure now, but for the moment I want to do another one of my color talks. Might be the last one for a while. They haven't proven to be particularly popular for some reason, don't know why. But my cooking has actually garnered quite a few viewers. So I'll move back to cooking, I think. And I'm also writing about English cooking right now, because I'm writing a book on England and English ethnography and so forth. And cooking's a big subject. And outsiders tend to look down on English cooking for all the wrong reasons, but it's mostly ignorance of what England has to offer. And so I'll probably do something English on Friday, don't know. Anyway, for now, let's talk about the color orange. Now, orange is a really curious color. If you have watched any of my other color videos, which you probably haven't, because they're not very well viewed, you'll know that I mentioned, I think in the first one, that brown is a type of orange. It's dark orange. You make it by mixing red, yellow, and black paints if you're doing color subtraction. And red and yellow are orange. And historically, orange didn't appear as a word in many languages, didn't appear as a word in English until around the 16th century. It became a word for the color orange when people had oranges available to buy, which was not usual until around the 16th century. So once there were oranges, then people started talking about the fruit, the orange, and transferred the word orange from the fruit to the color itself. And before that, they had to have various like words that kind of jogged around it. Chaucer, I think, if I'm not mistaken, spoke of red-yellow. Like, it's not red, it's not yellow, it's red-yellow, it's somewhere in the middle. And one of the reasons that I'm interested in this is because I'm interested in how people classify things in general. And anthropologists for a long time have been interested in how languages classify colors. What Brent Berlin and Paul Kay in their 1960s famous color experiment demonstrated, with some criticism subsequently, they demonstrated that all languages have a word that is roughly equivalent to either black or dark versus light or white. So if a language has only two basic color terms, and by basic color terms they mean one single word that describes a color rather than something that is made of that color, so that, for example, gold is not a basic color term because it's the color of gold, or avocado is not a basic color term because it's the color of avocado. I guess avocado flesh. I don't think it's the color of avocado peel or skin. So anyway, they said that there were these basic color terms that begin with light and dark or black and white, or some version of that. That every language has those, but some languages only have those as their basic color terms. And then languages that have three basic color terms have dark and light as the two, and the third one is always red. And we see this in our signage very commonly, where we have black and white and red. Like for some reason, like red is particularly important. It's the color of blood, the color of danger. It's also the color of a lot of ripe fruits. Very interesting how red works. And so they go on. They've got 7 basic categories. Like after red, then if a language has 4 color terms, then the 4th term is either green or yellow. And the 5th term is the opposite. It's, you know, like if they have a word for green, then they now have a word for yellow. Or if they have a word for yellow, they now have a word for green. And so it goes until you get to level 7, and Berlin and Kay say there are actually 11 basic color terms. But category 7 is this kind of jumble where you go through the first 6, which also includes blue. And then at the 7th, you've got pink, orange, purple, gray, all like jumbled together. Like if a language has 8 color terms, the 8th could be purple, or it could be pink, or it could be gray, or it could be orange, or the 9th could be any of them, or the 10th. Like there's no particular order. So orange is one of those latecomers that very few people have. Now, one of the quibbles that I have had for a very long time with the Brent Berlin and Paul Kay study is that they say that a basic color term cannot be the color of something. First, well, orange is the color of oranges. That's how the word entered the English language. So we cannot claim that orange is a basic color term in English, but they don't accept that. And they don't accept it partly, I think, because they didn't bother to look in the Oxford English Dictionary, and partly because it's just like been so long ago. I mean, I think that pink could also be something similar, in that pink is a flower. And you talk about pinks. When somebody says pinks, they can mean like a posy of pinks could be a posy of flowers, and they are pink. So I'm not so sure about that either. But let's just stick with orange for the moment. So orange appeared in the English language somewhere around the 16th century as oranges, the fruit, appeared in markets in England. But here's the really curious thing. If you happen to live in Southeast Asia, as I do, you'll know that most oranges in Southeast Asia are not orange. They have a green skin. I don't understand the biochemistry of it fully, but I believe that in tropical climates, oranges ripen without the skin turning green. Like an unripe orange is green, and in countries that raise oranges, let's say in greenhouses, or import them from tropical climates, that the skin turns orange in colder weather. But we don't get any colder weather here in Cambodia. It's 32 degrees every day of the year. And so a great many oranges are green. There are some that are orange, but the majority are green. And it's a very weird thing to go to a market and want some oranges, and there's these green things that look like they're not ripe. But if you cut them open, the flesh is orange when they're ripe. Which leads to this peculiarity in, let's say, the Khmer language of Cambodia, where to say color orange, it's a little bit complicated, I won't get into it, but in Khmer language, you start by saying color to indicate that that's what you're talking about as opposed to something else. They'll say color, they won't say color orange, they say color orange juice because orange juice is orange, orange skins are green. So oranges in England would have been orange. And that leads me to talking about oranges. And one of the first things that happened when oranges were introduced into England was that people started making orange marmalade to preserve them, although they don't really need that, but it's a good thing to do. So, and I do it, and this, I think I made this on a video some time ago. This is my orange marmalade, which requires, among other things, a sugar thermometer so that you can get the sugar to the right temperature. And you also have to make sure you have enough pectins from the seeds and so forth. And it's, I'll just show you, it's actually not particularly orange, it's brown. It's dark orange, or you know, sort of like light brown or dark orange, which is it? Here's my my ramen that I often make. This is the nasi goreng version. That's the Indonesian version of noodles, and this is bright orange. So it's just for clarification. So orange marmalade, there's a curiosity that I'm also talking about in my book. People who think they know things like to tell the story of marmalade, and they like to say that the word marmalade is a corruption of a sentence in French that refers to Mary Queen of Scots. Some of you may know that Mary Queen of Scots spent a lot of time in France for various reasons. And she spoke French, as was also common of the elite in Scotland, that Scotland and France had what was called the Old Alliance. They both hated the English. And so if one raided, then the other raided at the same time in order to give the English a headache about which place they're going to defend first. So anyway, Mary Queen of Scots supposedly was prone to severe headaches. And it's said that when she had these severe headaches, she liked a concoction made from sugar and oranges that apparently made the headaches better, and the French maids would whisper to each other when these bouts of headaches occurred, "Marie est malade," which is, you know, Mary is malade, is sick. Marie est malade, and that became marmalade. Marie est malade, marmalade. Complete nonsense, absolute rubbish. Again, if you bother to look in the Oxford English Dictionary, you'll find that the word marmalade appears in English in around 1480, which is 60 years before Mary was even born. And there are cognates in all the Romance languages marmaleta, marmalada, and so forth, that refer to, in modern times, refer to any kind of preserved fruit made into a jam. But originally meant, in Portuguese, quince jam. It was specific to quince jam, what is called membrillo in Argentinian Spanish now. But it became the word for preserves in English, and then eventually around 1580, so that's after Mary Queen of Scots had died, it was used for orange marmalade. So it was used for preserves in the 15th century. In the late 16th century, it was used specifically for orange marmalade because oranges had appeared in Europe at that time. And one of the questions that I'm pondering is why it is that people like to hang on to false stories when they can easily check up using a dictionary, or these days using the internet. They can just fact check. Why don't people fact check? Why do people like conspiracy theories always associated with this amorphous group of people called they? You know, they don't want you to know. They are hiding the truth about the flat earth. They are hiding the truth about the fact that no one has been to the moon yet. They are somehow ubiquitous. They never say, I would say they, the people who espouse these conspiracy theories never explain who they are. Although occasionally with flat earth, they'll say it's NASA. Now, why NASA? It's because most of these theorists come from the United States, and that's their space agency. But there are dozens of space agencies throughout the world. And does it mean that somehow they're all in collusion, that none of them have satellites, that none of them have satellite images of the Earth from space, that none of them have satellites in geosynchronous orbit around the Earth that they couldn't do if the Earth wasn't a sphere, and so on? That who they are is just not important, apparently. Reminds me of a couple of books written in the 60s in Australia about Australian accents, and one was called Nose Tone Unturned. Nose Tone Unturned. And in it, they have, among other things, the word aorta, you know, spelt the same way as the aorta in your heart. But it used in the expression, I ought to pass a law against it. Like they. Who's they? We don't know. I ought to do it, though. So anyway, back to orange. Now, what it says to me is something very important anthropologically. I can ask the question, does orange exist? Well, it's kind of the same question as does red exist, or does blue exist, or does green exist, but it's a little bit different because orange is halfway between red and yellow. So why do we need to pull it out and say that's its own color? If we go down the visible spectrum, we've got red, orange, yellow, green, blue, indigo, violet. What about the color in between green and blue? Why don't we have a word for that? Well, I guess we do. I mean, apart from some people just calling it blue-green. But turquoise is a possibility. Why don't we take that space between green and blue and have a designated word for it? And interestingly, turquoise is the name of a stone that is turquoise colored. There's blue-green color. So it's just like orange is the color of oranges and designates that one in between red and yellow. Why don't we do blue-green? I don't know. I'm writing about it right now, and I guess the answer is, in some sense, at least this is the conclusion that I'm coming to in my book, is that humans are illogical, irrational. Their culture, their language, everything they do doesn't make sense. And trying to make sense out of it is a fool's errand. That's what I'm trying to write about in this latest book of mine, which is essentially saying that the whole history of anthropology is a complete waste of time, although I don't mean it quite that way. What I'm saying is that when you find order and pattern and logic, you're missing something. Because whenever you find a rule, there's always an exception. Whenever you find logic, you'll also find illogic with it. So there we are. We've strayed a long way away from oranges and orange, but I hope you've enjoyed this diversion, and I'll be back on Friday with some kind of recipe. Don't know, but meanwhile, tell your friends about my videos. Please like, please subscribe, and I'll be back with pots and pans on Friday. Have a great week.